Dirty Scrap Podcast.
Hey Ryan, how you doing?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm doing fine, doing fine. Thank you for making the time for this.
Oh, my pleasure, man. My pleasure.
Well, the way to start it always is like, I like to like dig into your past, into your history, how you went from, because as far as I know, your bachelor is in education, right?
Yes, yes.
How a guy that started like, with a bachelor in education, jump into the aluminum industry? How that comes?
So, I've kind of pretty much done everything in my life backwards. You know what I mean? So, I started out as a young guy. I went to college first. And I failed
Right.
miserably. I just didn't have any direction as a young man, and so I came back home and I went to work, and I found a great job with a great company, Kaiser Aluminum in Ohio. And it was a great opportunity for me, and it provided a very steady income for me as well. So I learned everything I could, and then I met my wife and had some children, and then I went back to college and got my degree. So it just, over a 10-year span, that's how that pretty much transpired. But the
Right.
aluminum world has been great for me, just my entire career.
Yeah, I mean, and during the years when I've been like doing this podcast and knowing a lot of different people in the industry, looks to me that a lot of those guys that are in the industry right now and they have a lot of experience, like you, like over 20 years of experience in this
Yeah.
business, and even people with more experience, they just got into this business by accident. It
Yeah.
wasn't something that they were like, visualizing for the long term. No, they just got into the industry by accident, and then they started like develop it, certain kind of like they like the industry and they stayed.
Yeah.
How was starting in a company like Kaiser Aluminum, that is a huge company, and they have
Yeah.
they are very diversified. They have like secondary aluminum installations. They also have aluminum recycling facilities for sorting and segregation, and they do these slabs and ingots. And how was starting in a company like that one?
I mean, like you said, I was very lucky, right? When I came into the business, there were, older generation that was, already seasoned. So they were just kind of teaching me as I was, coming into the business. But it was, they took the educational approach. I guess you can make that correlation there. That's the approach that they took with me. This is why we do things. This is the reason that we do it this way. These SOPs are important. But when it comes to scrap and things like that, it was also broke down for me very simple as well. Obviously the aluminum world's got thousands and thousands of different alloys.
Right.
So in each one of them have an intricate piece that's different from the other.
Right.
So your 7,000 is much different than your 2,000, so on and so forth. And those are the things that you kind of basically, those are your foundational pieces and how you segregate those things. And from chemistries, and I was just very lucky to have metallurgists tell me, this is why we do this, and this is because.
Right.
So,
But you spent in Kaiser like 9 years, right?
yeah, almost 10. Yeah, absolutely.
Wow, that's a lot of experience. How was spending almost 10 years in a company like that with so many different approaches? Because what I want to focus on this episode is more on the process side. You have a lot of experience on process,
Yeah.
mostly the old episodes that I did in the past. We were talking about the market. We were talking about more or less the new administration and how we can see the tariff right now and how it's going on. Everything with all this uncertainty that we will get into that point, but
Yeah.
I want to get into these different aspects of your experience working with these big companies, because you also used to work with Alcoa.
Yeah.
So you have the experience between the primary sector and the secondary sector that I think is amazing to have it. And not too many people have it. So mostly all the time, the people that started in the primary sector, they just stay there, right?
Yeah.
So having these 10 years of experience in a company like that, what are those key points that you can say, well, I learned this, and this is what I am applying right now from the process point of view?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, from a process standpoint, aluminum is aluminum, right? We all know
Right.
that. Casting is casting. We all know that. But everybody's got their own different processes. it's basically the same and it's different. That everything has to be kind of different when you're separating these companies. But learning the process with aluminum, obviously there's different kinds, right? You've got billet and you've got ingot, and then you've got your secondary products of what we produce here at Fagor. It's an ingot type form,
Right.
but the processes are much different, obviously, with round versus the square, but the foundational pieces are pretty much the same, right? It's water, direct chill casting, and all that good stuff, but it's pretty much the same across the board. It's just everybody's got their small, intricate pieces that they change and you make it different from the other.
Right. Primary sector versus secondary sector. What are
Yes.
the difference?
Well,
I mean, it's very specific. First of all, you don't need that robust, I will say, facilities in the secondary aluminum side. Even though if you are a big company,
right.
primary sector is super huge and also energy intensive, right? But what are
Sure.
those key points that they are making a lot of difference between one and the other? And from the quality of the aluminum perspective, what are the
Yeah.
difference?
Well, I mean, obviously in your primary, it's a little more intricate, right? It's very
Right.
more it's a little more critical versus the secondary. And everybody's trying to at least competitive in each market, right? Primary is still using their return scrap, in-house scrap versus secondary, which is basically just recycled material, and you're putting into a form of a certain alloy, right?
Right.
The primary business is obviously much critical, aerospace, things like that, and the secondary is a little different, some die casting, some pressurized vessels and things like that. So I mean, the difference there, casting's not much different, but when it comes to processes and process controls and chemistries and things like that, I mean, there's obviously much more differences, I guess you could say, in between the two.
Right, right. So mostly, because what I'm seeing right now, and now that you are talking about being competitive in this industry, we all know that the primary sector is trying to come back into the US.
Sure.
From your experience, do you think it's going to be something that is going to be doable? I mean, the problem that we are seeing right now is, for me, for example, it's my personal opinion, but one of the difference of the secondary aluminum smelters or facilities and the primary smelters is looks to me that the primary sector is depending too much on the government administration and all these potential policies that can give them certain kind of or certain type of competitiveness regarding energy consumption and energy cost for them to be competitive in the market against China and Russia and these low price primary aluminum that we can now with the tariff is a little bit more complicated. Now, instead, you have the secondary industry that actually depends on the market, not on those potential helps that can come from the administrations. What do you think about it? Do you think it's going to be easy to reindustrialize the aluminum, the primary aluminum sector in the U.S.?
I guess it just depends on who you talk to, right? Everybody's got a different look, and it's just I think about like a science project. You're going to run some experiments and see your results, and then record your results. I mean, we're in a kind of an area that we've never been before, right? And just like you
Right.
said, the secondary product is basically has an upper hand right now because it's controlled by the current market, right?
Right.
The primary business, it could be 3, 6, a year out, and they're trying to predict those prices, and it's kind of hard. It's a juggling act, you know what I mean? So it's just natural. I think it's human reaction too, right? Everybody wants to ask somebody what to do,
Right.
and if you ask mom and she says no, and then you go ask dad and he says yes, you know what I mean? It's kind of like that. But I'm not sure. I can't really answer your question, to a T. I've got my own opinions, but I don't think it's like I said, we're in that area where we're running the experiment. We're trying to find out the results, with tariffs and things like that, and overseas competitiveness. It's all going to be just recording, and it's going to probably take us a good 6 months to a year, maybe even 18 months to figure out if this is going to work or not.
Right. Yeah, a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah.
How? Because through your history, so you went from Kaiser to Alcoa and then other companies, and then you got into aluminum alloys that now is Fagor Regen Aluminum, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
What are those strategies that you guys on the secondary sector needs to achieve or to implement to deal with this uncertainty in the market, and how easy is to source scrap right now?
Yeah. So, right now we're strategically put in a place right now, in Pennsylvania, um, where we've got a lot of resources for us, right? We've got Philadelphia, and New York, and New Jersey, and Baltimore, and these are big cities that have huge scrap yards. So the scrap for us is very easy to obtain,
Okay.
but the trick is we've got to buy that scrap at a lower price, right? So we're
Right.
trying to buy as much as we can now because obviously the market is going to continue to increase, right? The demand of everything is going to increase, and the aluminum world, it looks like it's a big place, but it's actually a small world. You know what I mean? So we all
It
talk,
is.
everybody talks, and so all of us, secondary producers, we've talked, and we've got friends in Indiana right now that do the same thing as us, and their book's solid, clear until the end of the year. But the key is going to be scrap. You know what I mean? So
Right.
buying that at a low price, that's the key, and that's how we're going to stay competitive. But at some point, it's got to level out too. We all know that, but right now we're on the beneficial end of it.
Right.
Um, but we don't know how long that's going to go on for. But the market sounds like it's going to be very, very strong from here until well into next year even. So we're taking orders now for December.
Oh.
Like I said, the key right now is just buying scrap at a lower price, and that's what's going to keep us competitive.
How far in the time are you planning ahead? Because, for example, I was talking with a guy that they have a Chinese facility in China. It's
Yeah,
very weird the way that they handle the things. It's very different. The first thing is when you want to invest in China, you need a partner, a Chinese partner that they will own at least 51% of the company. So
yeah,
it's very different, but they are planning 15 years ahead. For me, it's like super crazy because in my business plan, I am planning like 6 months, seven
yeah,
months, a year ahead. For you guys that you need to source all this type of different scrap, and then you need to deal with all the different type of scrap, how
yeah.
are you planning ahead, and how long you trying to plan ahead?
So right now it's always a 90-day, right? That's your foundational piece is 90
Hmm.
days out, right? So April, May, June right now, we can pretty much kind of put our feelers out there where we're going to be within 90 days. It gets a little more scarier when it comes to the market past the 90-day mark, right? You're
Right.
basically taking some chances. We do take some things into consideration clear into December, but what's happened is, we take those orders now because it's a longevity order. Maybe we get some from February till December, but
Right.
we'll make sure we cover ourselves on the front end of those, and then if we lose a little bit towards the end, it kind of washes out and it's kind of even. But we're taking orders clear until December right now. But I can't. I don't know what the market's going to do 15 years from now. You know what I
Right.
mean? Every day is a blessing for me. So yeah. So I
Totally
just think,
agree, man.
yeah, I think that that might be a little extreme, but hey, if that's how they plan, that's great. But at the same time, I've got to handle the current market conditions, and maybe 18 months out, we can talk about a little bit. But it's hard, Julio. It's hard to predict those prices and what the market's going to do because that's basically what we're driven off of.
Right. So you need to take a lot of risk and be very resilient, right? In order
Yeah,
to adjust yourself every day. Let's get into a topic that I don't know how much you can talk about it or how much you want to talk about it. But the first time we met, you were working with this same company on the same location of the same company, but were aluminum alloys. And
mhm.
this company went through, everyone's in the industry knows about it. I don't want to mention any names or whatever,
Yeah,
but this company went through some legal processes that ended up with almost closing the company as aluminum alloys. And you were there. How was that process, and how much you can give us information about how do you deal with that? How was the process? Then
yeah.
you went out and then just coming back.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like you said, I've got a history of, companies I've worked for, and they've all been outstanding companies.
Exactly. So
So,
from here to a complicated issue,
right.
right?
Yeah, so and like you said, I worked for big companies, and then I went to work for a private company, which was fine. But there's some things that obviously you're not exposed to that
Right.
I was not exposed to. There was some things kind of going on behind the scenes that was going on that I didn't have any knowledge of. So when it really started coming down, when they made their presence on site and so on and so forth, that's kind of when I knew that the company was in kind of big trouble. And so, that's when I took a professional step back because I didn't want to associate myself with that. But yeah, I
Right.
mean, there was all kind of different avenues that went into the play, right? From, PPP money to governmental funding, and then obviously just taking funds from, outside sources and, not fulfilling the orders on the other end. So it was a conglomerate of things that come together. But, one of the good things that's come out of this is that one of the victims from that scheme, I guess you could say, or Ponzi scheme or whatever you want to call it, really believed in the company and thought that they could at least recover their money if they could maybe step in. So what they did is they bought the assets and
No way.
they bought the assets and they turned the business around, and it's actually become very very positive for all of us. And yeah, I mean, it's been a great experience. But like you said, I don't want to put out any names out there, but
Right.
it's pretty simple to go out there and just kind of Google that a little bit. So, but no, I mean, it's been a fun ride, right? So, and then on the backside of that question, yes, there were some growing pains there too, Julio, right? So it's a small world, and everybody knew the location was, what was going on there. And so, for about 6 months, it was kind of a lot of phone calls and a lot of empty phone calls on the other end and hang-ups and don't call me ever again. And it's been fun. It struggled at the beginning, but it's been fun, and
Right.
it's turned around. And so when Fagor came in and purchased the company 51%, as a partner, we still were struggling. We were still struggling to get that customer base. And then all of a sudden, it seemed like the light switch turned. We got a couple of good customers. And the doors kind of blew off right now. And like I said, man, we've been booked since December, January, February. We're booked solid all the way till July, and we're taking orders clear into December now. And before I actually hopped on here with you, we just found out that we're pretty much booked solid almost until October. So and
Good.
that's yeah, it's very very good. But like you said, it's the planning. But
Right.
yeah, it's been a
How?
crazy ride. It's been a crazy ride.
I want to get a little bit more deeply into this conversation about how you guys are coming from all this shit that happened to the company, and
No,
then Fagor came, bought the assets, but it's not just having the Fagor name into the door, right? It's
no,
it's, it's a hard job to get those the people that trust did used to trust with in you, and they are
yeah.
not trusting anymore. How you make those people to come back into your let's say business, or or they allow you to get into the business back again? How you guys are surfing this big wave right now?
Okay, so when I was with the aluminum alloys prior to Fagor Regen right now, I had great relationships with our customers. Right, I had trust. I would actually visit some of these sites, and people would trust me and our processes. And once they knew that I was, I had left, they still stayed as a customer, but kind of some things kind of fell through the cracks, and qualities and whatever in the product, product liabilities, it kind of got kind of crazy, but. Once I came back, I reached out to some solid people that I knew that trusted me and trusted my processes. And that's kind of what I focused on was, the quality systems at our location. Can we put together a good quality product and then build that from, one order to another order to another order. And that's kind of what I did. And I took a solid foundation of about 3 customers and built that from there. And they've been growing since. And then, obviously the brokers, and it's just been a crazy, crazy thing, right?
I
We've
can
got,
imagine.
it's, we've got brokers in Chicago and Indiana and California, and, we're shipping all over the place. And, we're even shipping to Europe and South America. So it's crazy what's going
Really?
on. But it's been a crazy 6 months, that's for sure. But it's been a fun one at the same time.
Right. I can imagine how easy is right now to move aluminum in the entire U.S. country, because freight cost is hard, man. I mean, it's very, very costly right now. So how easy is that logistic, and how do you handle to ship here and then 1,000 miles away? How
Sure.
do you deal with that?
Well, it's funny because when we quote material or orders, we always say this is X, this is picked up,
Right.
and then we say this is your price plus freight. And it's been actually a good tool for us because we used to know where the freight would be the cost, but over the last 3 weeks, diesel fuels went from $3.65, $4 to five, almost $6 that we're seeing in some places right now. So what used to cost us 10 cents to send to the West Coast is now cost us close to 17. It's just insane. So when we quote our material, it's basically picked up or plus shipping. So that's kind of how we're dealing with that. But nothing's really changed for us on that part of it because we have our own logistics company. But
Right.
obviously the costs have just went through the roof with the fuel charges, and it wasn't like a progressionary thing either. It happened overnight. On Sunday it was X, and then on Monday it was almost double. So
Right.
how do you predict that? I don't know, but we're trying to adjust the best we can. But it hasn't changed for us from a perspective of getting logistics somewhere
Mhm.
else. The cost has really kind of driven sky high here lately.
Right. And what is the reaction of the customers when you see that change from one day to another? Are they open to, just deal with it, or is some kind of trouble that they are putting on the table and you need to try to push? How is that relationship?
It's actually very good because if you're open and honest, with your customers, then they kind of understand as well. So I had a customer that was like, "Hey, why does it cost me $4,400 to ship it, to my location?" Well, I'll tell you what, let's keep that $4,400, and then you try to book some freight, on your end of it, and he would get to 5,200 and 5,400, and I was $1,000 cheaper. So,
There you go.
and that's how the kind of the trust kind of comes together on that one. But if you're open and honest with people, they know that you're going to get the cheaper price from a logistics perspective for sure.
Right. From the perspective of the process, what do you think it is more important? Because right now I'm seeing that secondary aluminum facilities, they are trying to get into the market to replace in some point the primary sector. At the end of the day, what we want to do is go in that direction, right? To reduce the primary aluminum dependency and start working more on the recycling rates, increasing our recycling rates. But to get into that point, we are not just need more infrastructure, but we also need high quality aluminum coming out of 100% scrap. How easy is to do that, and what are those key points? Technology, process control, operators. What are those key points that you need to understand very well from the process point of view to get into that very close quality to the aluminum that you want to provide, similar to the primary sector?
Right. Yeah, it's not easy, right? It's not easy. And the primary business, that stuff, aluminum's dirty, man. It is.
It
It's a
is.
dirty material. But obviously the processes are much different. Primary businesses, you're kind of going from a melter to a holder to a degasser and then a filtration system, and
Right.
then you get Limca tests and stuff being ran at the end. And the primary or secondary business is much different and much more vanilla. But what we are seeing to make ourselves even more competitive to get into the aerospace business is we're seeing inline degassing for us. So we're degassing and reducing the hydrogen levels inside the aluminum. You're starting to see some CCFs, ceramic foam filter, CFFs. I'm sorry, ceramic foam filters at the end of our processes,
Right.
and filtering some inclusions out of there, the big stuff at least. And then, but you're seeing that on the secondary side of it. But after that, there's not much more you can do because it's already processed, right? You're talking about wheels and sheet and some plate that's already been in product, and you're
Right.
recycling through. So it's already been processed. It's being processed a second time. That's the challenge, right? It's already been processed and used, and you're trying to put it back into a form that we can use it again, which is it can be done, but it's just what are the requirements customers are having at the other end of it? It's kind of what's driving that. So
Right.
you've got your big customers like Boeing and the aerospace industries. They've got certain criteria that you have to follow. Where the secondary is already it's done that already, and it's kind of going through that process again. So it's being not first time, but also twice now, and then being processed into a finished product. So it's all customer driven at this point.
Right. And how important is in the secondary sector? For me, it's super important. But for example, from your side, that you are more involved into the process itself, the good sorting and the good scrap selection against high quality aluminum, and so mostly aluminum recoveries. Because one thing that I'm seeing in the US, or I've been seeing this through the years that I've been working in this industry here in the US, it's almost 10 years already. For me, was very interesting seeing the flexibility we have here in the US, talking about landfills, talking about emissions, that we don't have that in Europe, and not even in Latin America is a lot of restrictions. But here we can see that it's a lot of flexibility that I'm not saying is bad or good. It's just it is what it is, right? And at the end of the day, you need certain kind of flexibility in order to be profitable. If you go and see China, they don't care about the environment. But even though again, I am not saying that it's bad or good. It's just a way to do things. But here in the US, definitely we have a lot of experience with this flexibility, right? But
Mhm.
nowadays, we are seeing more and more people get involved into green aluminum, reduce the CO2 emissions, and increase the aluminum recycling rates. That means that you will take more aluminum out of the same volume that you are processing. How easy is to increase your aluminum recycling rates without having a good, let's say, sorting and segregation processes, and how much the technology is impacting this way to do things?
Sure. Well, obviously we're restricted with EPA and things like that, right? There's permitting and all kind of good stuff.
Right.
But in the name of the game for the secondary product, like you mentioned before, is recoveries and things like that, right? And how your melt rates and a lot of things are all in factor here. But I think that's a tough one, Julio. To be honest with you, but we're seeing 96, 97% recovery rate. Obviously, we're using our furnaces the most efficient that we can get them to be,
Right.
and that's how we make our money. But segregating the scrap and segregating the good stuff and the bad stuff and the contaminated things like that. We don't put anything in our furnaces that are contaminated, and obviously it kind of goes back to our suppliers. But that's the key, right? It's basically recoveries and how you're going to be as efficient as you can by following all the laws as well. Here in the U.S., which are very strenuous, but you have to have them. You know what I mean? So I don't know if that kind of dances around your question, I guess, a little bit. I don't know if I answered it the
It
best I
is.
could.
It is. I mean, at the end of the day, what you need, the industry need to understand is the more that you understand that you need to have a bridge between the sorter or source that you are dealing with and your technology, you will increase your aluminum recycling rates.
Yeah.
Definitely is something that we need to get more into it, right? In order to make more aluminum and reach more recycling rates. Now, from your experience, how easy is to work with labor here in the US? That is not easy to find it. And I think that all these aluminum secondary facilities are struggling right now with labor.
Yeah.
How easy or how hard is to deal with it? And what are those strategies that you need to implement or you are implementing right now in order to, just go over it?
Yeah, it's tough. The labor market is very, very tough right now, Julio. Like you said, you're seeing it. We're seeing it. Just for an example, you hire 10, you're lucky if you get one. You know what I mean? If they stay. So it's just kind of like the nature of the beast. But obviously, it's a worker's market as well too. If you don't want this job, you can go get another one. So
Right.
and the jobs are being competitive. I mean, you're even seeing, I saw a sign the other day, McDonald's was $18 an hour. And that's just crazy to me. You know what I mean? But
Right.
so we had to be creative. So we've come up with some incentives. It actually works both ways, right? It works good for me. It works good for our employees. When we bring in wheels, they've got valve stems and lead weights and steel
Right.
inserts, and when we clean all that stuff off the wheels. So at the end of the day, we just have those guys, segregate those things, and we'll get a box of lead weight, and then we'll get a box of steel inserts, and at the end of the year, we'll recycle that, or once a quarter, we'll recycle that, and we'll hand out a little bonus. I mean, you got to think millions and millions of pounds of wheels that come in, you're going to get a good bit of lead weight and steel inserts. So
Right.
it's a good little recycling program. It's a good incentive for the guys to do something, and it increases their hourly rate. From let's say $20 an hour, for example, it can be to 22 or 23, and you get that check all in one lump sum. Usually by December, and someone's got pretty good Christmases and things like that. Because that's how we're kind of. And then you got attendance issues and things like that, and we put incentives behind that to come to work, and make sure you're staying. And I mean, you just got to get creative.
Right, right. How easy is to make this transition between a U.S. company and now having Regen Fagor that is they have facilities all over the world, right?
Big.
Getting to this U.S. market, how easy is to make this assembly between you, for example, that you have a lot of experience in the U.S. and start dealing with guys from Europe and Mexico and working together to put this company back again into the market with a lot of trust. And how do you do that? How easy is that transition?
I tell you, I'm gonna be honest with you, Julio. I came into this with an open mind, right? I said everybody's got their own styles, they're different, just kind of take that all in. And to be honest, it has been amazing. It's been a great transition. They're very, very supportive. They're very, very open. They give us a lot of resources. Now that we're one team here, but it's been very, very easy and very, very pleasant for me. Obviously being the location manager there, but I can't say enough about how easy it's been for us and easy for them. And then they're also learning as well, right? I mean, they're very seasoned. They're very seasoned in the global markets, but not so much here in the U.S. And so they've got this carbon footprint here in the U.S. now, and they're learning all the laws and things and labor and how it goes. And
that is not easy. U.S. is not easy.
It's not. And they've been actually very, 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 very pleasant, and it's been very easy for me, and I'm very thankful for that.
I'm good. I'm very happy for you, man. What are those implications that this tariff are putting a company like your company, for example? Are you feeling a lot of impact with this tariff right now, or you are feeling that is giving you more flexibility and easy way to sell your product internally in the US?
I don't know. I haven't really. It does have an impact right across the board. And so part of our business, Julio, is, we trade as well.
Sure.
We trade commodities, and, we're seeing it on that side of it for sure. But too much, obviously, internal scrap from, being exported is a big deal. We see it there. For our product here at our location, you're not seeing that too much. But we are seeing an increase of volumes, I know, across the board, with brokers and direct sales.
Definitely.
And like I said, we've got friends in Indiana that they're booked solid clear until the end of December. So everybody is booked solid, and we're all talking about, increasing capacity. So that might answer your question a little bit there, Julio, that, it's helping us, but I can't really put my finger on that quite yet because it's been so, it's too soon, I think, to have a big impact. But, you are seeing some things, but you're also seeing some price increases too with, scrap and finished products. So, but yeah, I mean, it's having an impact. I just don't know if it's positive or not yet. We will see that in the next probably 6 to 8, 10 months, a year.
Yeah. We will see.
Yes.
Automation. How important is automation nowadays in a process like your process, like is remelting, cleaning, casting, packaging, shipping? How important do you think is going to be automation in this type of industries?
Well, I mean, we put in our automatic stacker here at our location. That's helped with my labor for sure, because it's taken away a lot of the muscle that was needed. So it's very important, and also, helps us in other different areas too. We've got the DEP and the EPA. We're heavily regulated just like everybody else. Automation kind of helps us there. And collects all of our data there. So it's very, very important to our facility, right? And to grow as well. So yeah, the automation part of it's a very, very big part of us growing and moving forward for the next year to 18 months for sure. But it's very, very important.
Right. To wrap up this episode, Ryan, what is the future that we can expect from Fagor Regen Aluminum? What are you bringing to the table for this market?
So, boy, that's a tough one. I think that
that's the idea. That's the idea of the podcast, man.
Yeah. I don't know if I can answer that, but I'll try my best here. But I think Fagor Regen, we offer a very good product, right? We're putting our name out there. It's becoming a very good, positive company to be a supplier of these products. and we're shipping all over the world, right? So what we offer is, a very, very good product. It's a secondary product at
Right.
a very competitive price that I think that we can, beat pretty much anybody in the market right now. And then, we're growing just like everybody else, right? So we're growing with our customers. So, we're never going to, fail to deliver on our end. We may have to turn away business, but we're never going to fail, right? We want to do that, but we want to make sure that we put out the best product for our customers, and we want to make sure that they trust us, because that's the key at the end of the day. Like we talked about before, it's been 6 months in building these relationships back up to what they were. We want to keep them that way. So yeah.
Good. Sounds good. So sounds like a good future. And
Yeah.
Ryan, believe me, I am very happy that you have this new partnership and you are pushing very hard to make this company trustable again in the market. I think you are doing a great job. I
Thanks.
think people is going to hear more about you and your company. And well, if in some point we can have more discussions, I will be more than happy to have you back again into the podcast, because definitely the only thing that I am seeing in your company is growth and success, because I saw that you guys are working together as a team, and I think it's great to have people that is investing in the US, but also local people in the US trying to push this industry harder. So really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for making the time, and I know you are super busy right now.
Yeah, I am. But it's always a pleasure to talk to you, Julio. Always, man.
Okay, cool, man. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I think that all these insights for the audience will be awesome. I will let you know about when we set up the episode, and let's keep in touch, man. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right, Julio. Talk to you soon, man.
Okay, cool. Take
Dirty
care.
Scrap
Bye-bye.
Podcast.